All right. This is the weekly discussion on the rest of the Big Ten. If you want to hear my thoughts on Michigan, go watch my Michigan video. I don't talk about them in this video. I talk about the rest of the Big Ten. I make my own individual video for Michigan because I am a Michigan fan. So we're going to talk about the other 13 teams that played this week. Well, is it 13? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, 13 other teams who played this week. Let's just get right into it, man, because I don't want to waste any time. Illinois. They had the Thursday game. We're still doing these Thursday, Friday games for some reason. I don't know why. Everything should just be on Saturday from now on. At home against Chattanooga. Illinois won this game 31-0. Pretty much dominated the whole way through. Chattanooga never had a chance of winning this game. Illinois, I'm still impressed with them. Now, Illinois is a team that, while they are, what are they now, 3-1, they are still 0-1 in the conference. That is a concern if you're an Illinois fan, and that's a concern that I have for them, because they did beat Chattanooga. They shut them out 31-0. And they have other wins over like Wyoming and some other team I can't remember, and Virginia. Those are their wins. So Wyoming, Virginia, Chattanooga, but they got that 1 3-point loss to Indiana in week 2 or week 1, week 2. I don't remember what it was. And that's something Illinois can't. They can't lose in Big Ten games, because those are the games that really matter. If they want to be considered in the race for the Big Ten West, they need to start winning those games. And they play Wisconsin, I believe. Yep, they play Wisconsin on the road this upcoming weekend. These are two teams that both have something to prove. If Illinois wants to be in the discussion, even in the discussion for Big Ten West hopes, making a Big Ten championship, they need to win this game. First off, that would be the first step, and just kind of put that Indiana game behind them. I feel like at this point, Illinois is probably not going to win the West. They probably won't even be second or third in the West. But Illinois still needs to get that win if they want to be considered. I'm not hopeful for them. I want to be, but I'm not. So Illinois is just one of those teams that, never is very good, unfortunately. And while they are 3-1 right now, which is a good record for them, they still have that loss to Indiana. And I mean, if they had beaten Indiana, I'd be like, hey, Illinois is on a roll right now. They're doing good, but they have that one loss, that one blemish. And even if it would have been a close loss or a close win, I'd still put them up there. You'd have to. I mean, they're in the Big Ten West, and they haven't lost. So, but that's not the case. So, this win against Chattanooga really doesn't do much for them other than just kind of give a little bit more of a confidence booster, I guess. And it's not like Chattanooga is like a bad team in their own division or their own conference or whatever. They're 3-1 themselves. So, I mean, compared to the rest of the college football and the major conferences, they're no good. But when it comes to the type of teams they play, they're pretty good. And their only loss is Illinois. So, I mean, this is a good win for Illinois, but this Wisconsin game next Saturday is a big one for them. All right, I went on for way too long about Illinois. Next game. Penn State. Penn State at home against Central Michigan. They did win this one 33-14. Penn State is another one of those teams that is on a roll right now. They're beating everybody they play. They're looking good doing it. They were pretty close with Central Michigan. The score was 21-14 at halftime. At one point, it was tied at 14. But Penn State pulled away in the second half. Didn't allow Central to score any points, and they won this game. Sean Clifford looked really good again. So Sean Clifford has looked the best that he has looked since that, was it Purdue they played in week 1 or week 0 or whenever it was. This is the best they've looked since then. Who did they play? I'm really blanking. Yeah, Purdue. That 35-31 win over Purdue. This is the best that, he's been playing really good since that game. Central Michigan's not a great team, but this win for Penn State is good because next week they play Northwestern at home. They're a 25-point favorite. They should definitely win that game, and after that they're on a bye week, so they're sitting pretty right now, unless something really goes down and they somehow lose to Northwestern, which I don't see happening at all. Penn State looks really good right now. It could be going into their bye week undefeated, most likely, which is good to see. 5-0, undefeated, going into a bye week. Have a big road game against Michigan the following week after the bye week. That'll be Penn State's first major test, I guess you could say. So Penn State's sitting good right now, 33-14. They're looking good. They're looking like probably the second or third best team in the Big Ten East right now. Ohio State. All right. This is what I'm going to say about Ohio State. And I am not wearing the maize and blue sunglasses or the maize and blue glasses. I'm trying to look at this with clear eyes. With a clear mind. And not let my love of a certain team kind of block what I've seen out of Ohio State. And what I've seen out of Ohio State is the best team in the country. Now, if you want to disagree with me and say Georgia's the best team or Bama's the best team or Ohio State's the third best team in the country, I'm not going to argue with you. If you could take Georgia, Bama, and Ohio State and mismatch those top 3 any way you want to. But to me, top 3 right now, Ohio State, Georgia, Bama. That's my top 3. Ohio State has looked the most dangerous. Their offense is unbelievable. CJ Stroud is really good, excellent. He is sick. Well, how many touchdowns? He had 5 touchdowns in this game against Wisconsin. And people may say, well, who is Wisconsin? Wisconsin's got a very good defense under what's his last name? I'm blanking on the D coordinator's name, but a coordinator with a history of really great defenses, especially at Wisconsin. And Wisconsin usually always has a pretty good defense. Wisconsin really wasn't allowing a lot of points at all going into this game. How many points have they allowed all season? So they allowed 7 points against New Mexico State, probably with their backups in. They allowed 17 against Washington State, and they allowed 0 against Illinois State. And then Ohio State goes out there and lays 52 on them. I mean, yeah, who has Wisconsin played? But Ohio State, to me, at least offensively, looks the most complete out of not just any team in the Big Ten, but the most complete offense in the country. And I don't think anyone's really arguing. The numbers speak for themselves. 52 points against a good Wisconsin defense. And what was it, 77 points? So the week before against Toledo. That Notre Dame game is starting to look a lot more like Ohio State was just having some growing pains, which we've seen from Ohio State in the past, where they struggle early in the season. Take 2021, for example, where they lost, only scored 28 points against Oregon. And then by the end of that season, I mean, they were averaging 40-some points a game, and didn't allow and scored around that pretty much for the rest of the season, other than the Michigan game. Ohio State right now looks really dangerous, looks like the best team in the country to me. Again, if you want to say Georgia's the best team or Alabama's the best team or whomever, I'm not going to argue with you. We still have a lot of season to play. We're only in, what are we going in now? Week 5 next week. So we still have a lot of football to see and watch. But Ohio State, to me, looks the best right now. Defensively for Ohio State, this is a defense that was not good last year. And Wisconsin scored 21 in this game. 52-21 was the final. But most of those were in garbage time. The only score that Wisconsin had was in the second quarter. Probably was the only time that Ohio State's starters were in. And I mean, 21 points is just kind of those are with the backups in. So really, it was only 7 points they scored on Ohio State's first team defense. That sounds improved to me. Now, Wisconsin doesn't have a very good offense. I mean, just what I mean, and if you want to argue with me on that, I mean, I don't think I would argue. I would argue with you on that, because what has Wisconsin done other than beat up bad teams and only score 14 against Washington State? I mean, they don't have a very good offense, to be fair. Now we'll see, they can improve over the season. But Wisconsin, man, they got Illinois at home next week. So, kind of be a bounce back if they can win that game. They should be able to win that game. Ohio State, on the other hand, plays Rutgers at home. They should absolutely demolish Rutgers. They're a 40-point favorite, and they should be. Ohio State will definitely, most likely, win that game by a large margin and put up video game numbers again, even against our Rutgers defense that people were saying was really good, but allowed Iowa to score 27 points or something. I know only one of those touchdowns were on offense, but still. But yeah, Ohio State, to me, looks like the best team in the country. Oh, Indiana. Couldn't hang with Cincinnati. This is not the same Cincinnati team from last year. This Cincinnati team has a loss on their record. Oh, man. Indiana, I don't want to say Indiana's a bad team. I still don't know how I feel about Indiana, really. Let's look at their wins. They've got a 23-20 win over Illinois, so a 3-point win there. A 35-22 win over Idaho. Okay, they won the game. Wasn't super impressive, though. And a 33-30 win over Western Kentucky before losing to Cincinnati on the road, 45-24. It was hard to see for Indiana. I'm not an Indiana hater. I actually like Indiana, believe it or not. I mean, when your team beats them however many times in the last 20 years, 25 out of the last 26 years or something like that, it's hard to hate on a team that you beat every year. But Cincinnati was just clearly the better team today. Indiana, I don't feel like is a very good team. Cincinnati, I don't think is a bad team by any means, but they're definitely not the same Cincinnati team from last year. I really don't know really much what to say about Indiana other than it's kind of disappointing to see them lose the way they did. I was hoping that they would hang with Cincinnati. They did not. They clearly couldn't hang with Indiana, or with Cincinnati, I should say. So Cincinnati dominates Indiana. Indiana plays Nebraska next week, so I don't know. Is that on the road? Yes, it's on the road at Nebraska in Lincoln, so they should win that one. Because, I mean, if there's any team that Indiana's the one team that needs a bounce-back game after a beatdown like that. They need a bounce back game, and Nebraska's just the perfect team, right? I mean, Nebraska will probably still be in the game with Indiana, but will find a way to lose like they always do. I'm sorry. I always gotta get an opportunity to pick on Nebraska just because, but it feels like beating a dead horse at this point. Nebraska's a dead program, so Indiana should win this game next week and kind of have a bounce back and a conference win, which would be their second conference win, which would put them up there in the Big Ten East. Not saying they would stay there. They probably won't be anywhere near the top of the Big Ten East when the season is done, but 2-0 would be a good start. Yeah, hopefully Indiana can get a bounce back next week against Nebraska. They should, honestly. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say about Indiana. Iowa and Rutgers. Iowa and Rutgers I thought would be lower scoring than it was. Iowa wins this one 27-10. And this defense of Iowa is ridiculous. I mean, I've picked on Iowa for their offensive woes, and I still will, for not really putting up a good fight offensively. I will give them credit. They did have a 75-yard drive that was like 9 plays, and they did score on Rutgers. So they had, out of those 27 points, let's see. They only had, I believe, only one offensive touchdown. Is there a way I can look at the stats for this game? So, Iowa's first touchdown was a 45-yard interception return, so a pick six for 45 yards. A fumble in the second quarter, returned for a touchdown for 30 yards, a 25-yard field goal. So they already have 17 points at this point, and 2 of those touchdowns were on defense. One of them was a field goal, a 2-yard run. So that's the in the third quarter with 10 minutes left in the third, giving them 24 points. So that was the 9-play, 75-yard drive that lasted almost 5 minutes. And the 51-yard field goal that was also a 9-play, 42-yard drive that lasted 5 minutes. Rutgers couldn't get anywhere near the end zone. Rutgers is not a good football team. Honestly, after looking at Rutgers' offense, they may be worse or at least just as bad as Iowa's offense. Rutgers is a really bad football team this year. Really bad. And you thought maybe Rutgers could stay in this game with Iowa had they, limited their mistakes on offense. Iowa gets a lot of takeaways. That's the thing. They get lots of turnovers, defensively, fumbles, interceptions. Iowa is a really great, sound defensive team, and I think that's pretty much how Kirk Ferentz and Iowa likes it. So I do got to give them credit where credit is due. They have adjusted, I guess, not really adjusted, but I don't know. They've even with an offense as bad as theirs, they found ways to win. And they always say defense wins championships. I don't think this is a championship level team at all. And I think once Iowa really starts playing major offenses, not saying that they'll struggle, but they'll definitely have a harder time getting those takeaways. They have Michigan next week. Michigan, my Wolverines are on the road at Iowa. It is gonna be kind of scary. This is our first really real offensive, this is gonna be our first really big test for our offense against Iowa, because that defense of Iowa is really good. Our defense I'm not really worried about. I'm pretty sure we should be able to contain Iowa's offense. We were able to do it last year. I know we didn't. I know we're out Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo from last year to the draft. But it'll be a good game. I think it'll be a good game, and it'll be a game where if Iowa's defense isn't clicking, which it always does, it could get out of hand. But if Iowa can keep their if Iowa can keep in it with their defense, this could be a struggle, a low scoring game. We'll see. We'll see. As for Rutgers, Rutgers, man, I don't know what to say about Rutgers. Rutgers is not a good football team. They're 3-1, so I mean, I have to. I can't say that they're horrible or anything like that, but they're not good. I'll say that they're not a good team. Who have they beaten? 22-21 at Boston College in week 1. I said that was a good win. Boston College has proven that they're a terrible football team, so not a good win anymore. A win over Wagner is not impressing me, and a 16-14 win over Temple is also not very impressive. And then you lose to Iowa, and now you got to go on the road and play Ohio State. I will not be watching that massacre happen on live TV. I mean, I just don't feel like watching a team get absolutely manhandled and ran in dry by Ohio State same way Wisconsin did. Yeah, Rutgers, good luck. Even though luck won't help. Oh, Northwestern. Northwestern, man, they are just awful. They are terrible. I'm sorry. I tell it how it is here. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. Northwestern is a horrible football team. They are no good. They're really, really bad. Losing again at home to Miami of Ohio after losing to Southern Illinois last week. I thought about putting Northwestern in the Big Ten loser of the week again. But honestly, it'd be like beating a dead horse. I mean, I did it last week. You can't really get worse than losing to Southern Illinois. And I figured after that loss to Southern Illinois that they're not going to beat Miami of Ohio. Like, they probably won't beat Miami of Ohio. And if they did, that's like the biggest win of the season for them, which would be really sad, a home win over Miami of Ohio. But they did not. Could you say? And here's another thing: Northwestern losing to Miami of Ohio, and the fact that Northwestern still hasn't won a game since week 0 against Nebraska, just makes Nebraska look worse. Man, it's Northwestern and Nebraska just, even when Nebraska is off, they were on a bye week this week. Even when Nebraska's not playing, they still look like a dumpster fire because Northwestern, a team that beat Nebraska and hasn't won a game since, still can't get a win out at home. These are games, they are playing non-conference, like bad teams here. Miami of Ohio, Southern Illinois. These are games that Northwestern should be winning. They should be winning. And there's just another thing. You watch a Northwestern football game, it's dead. Nobody cares. There's not a single soul in that crowd that cares. The stadium is half full, and it already doesn't. The stadium already doesn't fit very many people. But when it's half full, you got barely 20,000 people in there. It's dead. Nobody cares. They're losing to Miami of Ohio, and it's like no one cares at all. Northwestern is a dead football program, and it sucks because Northwestern was so good a few years ago, back in, 2018, when they went to the Big Ten Championship? Had that, 10-win season or whatever? This isn't the same Northwestern at all. And I mean, Northwestern, man, they're in shambles right now. If you ask me, they're in shambles. Nebraska is even more shambles, but at least Northwestern still has their coach. For how much longer, I don't know, but I mean, No one's talking about Northwestern. Everyone talks about Nebraska because Nebraska used to be such a big program in the 90s, and people thought Scott Frost could save the program, and he failed miserably at that. Couldn't get a win to save his life, even if they were close games against good teams or great teams even. Couldn't get a win to save his darn life, got fired. Well, I mean, Northwestern's got a good coach, but they can't win a game either. So, but like I said, Northwestern at least has their coach. And I'm going to say this again. I said it in last week's video. Who do you think is the biggest loser in the Big Ten right now, Northwestern or Nebraska? I'm still in the boat of Nebraska being the worst right now, just because Northwestern beat them, and it still shocks me. Northwestern is 1-3, and their only win is week 0 against Nebraska, a game that they shouldn't have won anyway. But whatever. Let's move on from Northwestern. Good Lord. Purdue. Man, Purdue is not good. Yeah, they got the win over Florida Atlantic, but they should have beat the brakes off of Florida Atlantic. Oh, who does Northwestern play next week? Oh, that's right, Penn State. Yeah, they're losing that game big time. Purdue, 28-26 over Florida Atlantic. Purdue is a team that I had higher hopes for earlier in the season. I had them going further than I do now. I said they could probably win the West. I was really high on Purdue. Not so much anymore, and now they've lost their quarterback, Aiden. Is it Aiden O'Connell? Yeah, Aiden O'Connell. And I probably for the rest of the year with an injury. Not good if you're Purdue. I mean, that's just not news you want to get. Purdue is not a good football team, and while they are 2-2 now, with their 2 losses being Penn State, which was a close loss, and I mean that's pretty much why I gave Purdue the hopes that I gave them. Purdue, they beat a Penn State team that's supposed to be really good this year. And then they beat the brakes off Indiana State. But then they lost big time, or not big time, but they lost to Syracuse. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I'll give Purdue a break. Syracuse is a undefeated team. Syracuse is awful, dude. Yeah, they may be undefeated, but they're not a good football team. They just look terrible. Watch any Syracuse game this year. I mean, they're lucky they're playing lesser competition. They are really bad. And barely beating FAU is not impressive to me. And Purdue, man, they have a big test this weekend, next weekend, on the road at Minnesota. That's going to be, looking at their schedule, probably the toughest, or if maybe the second toughest game on their schedule. Probably the toughest game on their schedule, on the road at Minnesota. So I don't expect Purdue to win that game, but hey, Purdue has done crazier things, man. They beat Ohio State a few years ago, and they beat Michigan State last year, and you just really can't count Purdue out when it comes to getting wins they shouldn't get. So, I mean, I'm going to give Purdue the benefit of a doubt and say, they still have a chance, although I don't think their chances are very high at all. Speaking of Minnesota looks really good. Really, really good. They're finally ranked too. They went on the road against Michigan State. And I guess you can assume who my Big Ten loser is this week. Michigan State. 7 points against Minnesota. Now, I'm not saying that losing to Minnesota is a bad thing. You can lose to Minnesota if it's a close game. They put up a good fight. Minnesota's a really good team. They scored 7 points. And that 7 points didn't come till 17 seconds left in the game, when Minnesota was pretty much done anyway. They're like, whatever, we've won this game. We're up 34-0. 17 seconds left in the game, and they score in garbage time with their backup quarterback. Peyton Thorne looked absolutely horrible in this game for Michigan State. Threw 3 interceptions in this game, which is, I mean, it's so terrible. It was just, watching Michigan State, you're the Big Ten loser this week, by the way, Michigan State. Watching you guys try and block or try and play defense when Minnesota's throwing the ball is just absolutely pathetic. This pass defense of Michigan State is awful. This defense of Michigan State in general is another level of bad. Bad. Really, really bad. Michigan State is in trouble right now. I said last week, this is a big test for Minnesota. Minnesota, they got something to prove. They want to beat a team like Michigan State. Well, now at this point, it seems like I should have been saying Michigan State needs to beat a team like Minnesota. I had it backwards. Minnesota was clearly far and away the better team. Not even close. Tanner Morgan had a field day, threw for 3 touchdowns. Peyton Thorne and this Michigan State offense couldn't do anything. You look at the stats when the game was 34-0, and you see that Minnesota has almost 500 yards of total offense. Tanner Morgan threw for almost 300 yards passing. And Michigan State had just under 200 total yards in this game. Ridiculous. Tanner Morgan had more passing yards than Michigan State had total yards in this entire game. And think about this. A chunk of those last-minute yards that Michigan State got was with the Minnesota backups in and on the last drive of the game when Minnesota was packing it up and ready to leave with a big win, a big statement win. Minnesota, let me say this about Minnesota. They look really good. To me, look like the third best team in the Big Ten right now. The third best behind Ohio State and Michigan. And then I'd put Penn State at 4th. As of right now. That could change. That could flip-flop throughout the rest of the year, obviously. I'm not an idiot for saying this right now. So if that changes and we end up I end up being wrong, whatever. I've been wrong before. But to me right now, Minnesota looks like the third best team in the Big Ten right now. I mean, Minnesota is really good. They're really good. Michigan State, I don't know what you do about that defense. This Michigan State team looks exactly like last year's team, minus Kenneth Walker. The one guy that was keeping him in all those games, Kenneth Walker. I mean, that guy single-handedly beat Michigan last year. By himself. The rest of the team didn't do it. I mean, look at that game. 5 touchdowns on the ground. That was all their points right there. I mean, without Kenneth Walker, what are they? A subpar offense and a really bad defense. And they're paying Mel Tucker how much a year? I just don't get it. They're overpaying him way too much. They're paying him almost $10 million a year. I mean, I don't blame him. I would have signed that contract too, but way overpaying him. Oh, let's see. Was that all the games? Yeah, Michigan State. By the way, yeah, you're the loser of the week. But next week we got some big games. Michigan and Iowa. Michigan on the road. This is going to be a big game. Michigan's been in situations like this before where they're highly ranked going into Kinnick Stadium against an unranked Iowa team. And the last time this happened, Iowa beat us. And that was 2016. We were 9-0 going into that game. Lost to them last second. They scored a field goal to win that game. The only thing that makes me feel better is that this game is at noon. Michigan's a 10-point favorite. I think that's too high. It should be a little lower. But that's my prediction. I'm going to say Michigan will probably win this game, but it'll be lower scoring. And if they end up losing this game, I wouldn't be surprised, honestly. But yeah, Michigan, Iowa, big game next week for both teams. Minnesota at home against Purdue. They should get the win there, but I mean, we've seen crazier things happen with Purdue. Wisconsin and Illinois, two teams that need wins in the Big Ten, two teams that desperately just need anything positive right now. Not necessarily Illinois. Illinois is kind of sitting pretty right now. Wisconsin, but they do need that conference win. Wisconsin desperately needs to get some confidence back. Ohio State Rutgers is not even worth talking about. Penn State Northwestern's not even worth talking about. Michigan State plays Maryland on the road next Saturday. So, Talia Tungavailoa. I mean, after losing to Michigan, yeah, you think he's gonna have a field day with that pass defense of Michigan State? Oh yeah, he is. And then Indiana, Nebraska. Indiana should win that game. And those are pretty much the games from the week. Let's kind of quickly go over the top 25. My phone's about to die, so I'm going to do this really fast. Nope, that's from last week. Georgia beat Kent State 39-22. This was a weird game. I thought Kent State wouldn't score anything, honestly, but they scored 22 points. I don't know. Georgia looked a little iffy there, but they pulled out the win. Alabama destroyed Vanderbilt 55-3. Ohio State we talked about. Michigan we've talked about in the last video. Go watch it. Clemson and Wake Forest had a fantastic game that went into, I believe it went into overtime. It did. And Clemson wins this game 51-45. I don't know about that Clemson defense anymore, man. Kansas State did what they usually did against Oklahoma and beat them. So Oklahoma, you're out. USC survived a scare over Oregon State. I knew this game was going to be close on the road at night against Oregon State. Oregon State's undefeated. USC, I mean, this is just a trap game, but they pulled out the close win like I predicted. Kentucky beating Northern Illinois, but not really impressed. I don't know why Kentucky's ranked so highly. I just don't get it. Texas A&M and Arkansas had a fantastic game. Texas A&M wins 23-21. Arkansas going to go down. Arkansas has Alabama next week at home. So that'll be a big game right there. I'm rooting for Arkansas. Come on, Arkansas. Tennessee beat Florida for the first time in a million years, 38-33. Tennessee, to me, is a top 10 team right now. NC State beat UConn 41-10. Utah beat Arizona State 34-13. Oregon beat Washington State 44-41. Ole Miss beat Tulsa 35-27. Baylor beat Iowa State 31-24. Washington beat Stanford 40-22. BYU beat Wyoming 38-24. Texas lost to Texas Tech 37-34. Pittsburgh got the win over Rhode Island 45-24. And Miami lost to Middle Tennessee 45-31 after just getting ranked. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this week, guys. Thank you guys for watching. And let me know what you guys think about the games and for next week's games. All right, bye.